Hello everyone. I'm Soda, and I am here with Ms. Jamie, who is a writer and a poet, and she is going to talk a little bit about how she used her writing to empower her during some really difficult things throughout her life. And I'm really excited to hear her story. And as always, thank you so much for coming. And do you want to introduce yourself a little bit about your books and where we can find them? I know you write in some very different genres.
I do. So both of my books are on Amazon. My poetry is under Jamie Laster, and the second book I turned into erotica, and it's called Sensuosity, and it's under JD Laster. So I use my maiden name, and all my writing is Laster. So
Awesome. And what originally got you into writing?
when I was a kid, and the Scholastic book fairs, and I loved reading always. And it's like, Jamie, it's time to go to bed, and I'd have my flashlight. I'm reading under the covers and stuff. And then when I thought back about it, like of course, all girls want to be a ballerina, but I wanted to be a writer. And then when I was in high school, I was supposed to go to UC Berkeley, and I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. I was in all the programs, but higher math said no. Geometry, trigonometry was like, no. And so my mom's like, well, I could get you a tutor, but I was like, I want to be good at it, mom. So I was like lost in the wilderness. So I went to community college, and I took some, GE classes and a writing class. And then I think it was a creative writing class. And the teacher called me aside after the class, and she was like, um, I gave you a B on the assignment, because this was in the dark ages when you hand wrote it. And she's like, so did you, how long did it take you to write it in the car before class? And I was like, oh, did you see me? And she was like, no, I was just guessing. And I was like, oh, I did write it in the class before, in the car before class. And so then she was like, if you had just put a little more time, have you ever thought about writing? And then I was like, oh, I have a direction. So then I became, a journalism major, and I transferred to Cal State Hayward. I think now it's Cal State East Bay or whatever. And so then I couldn't find a job after college. And instead of going somewhere remote and coming back with experience, I got married, and that didn't work out. So I had reconciled with him, and my oldest was 5 years old. And then he was just, one day I just knew that was it. So I moved to Sacramento and became a single mom like 27 years ago. So I've lost my job like 8 times, and I was always, my kids were like always the priority. So I didn't really have a personal life. So I kind of healed myself through writing. So when I couldn't go out and they're playing their video games or outside or whatever, I would write poems, or I would start. I started a lot of books. I lost them on my flash drives, but just the writing was like a catharsis, and it just kind of healed my soul. And so sometimes if I was angry, I'm like writing angry poetry, or a murder book or something. And then sometimes the poetry really helped ground, help me find my center. So of course I had therapy too, but I've always liked writing. So, and then my youngest son, he writes now too. And they both were real readers, because I read all the time. So I think that kind of, he writes songs. So like, well, maybe mom had something to do with it. I don't know. Now I'm working on a sequel to Sensuosity, but I'm also trying to finish a book I started like 10 years ago, because I'm like a pantser. So some people are very disciplined, and they're like, I'm going to write 1,000 words today, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. Whereas a pantser will be like, okay, I wanted to start here and end here, and this happens. But once the dialogue starts, then I just let my characters develop that way. Like, they start having a conversation, and then I just kind of let the creativity flow that way.
Yeah, I'm kind of I'm more of a plotter. But sometimes I wish I could be more answer because I'm like, "Oh, this isn't going with the plot. I can't,
Oh,
go
yeah.
that way."
I mean, I have like certain plot points that I want to happen, but how it gets there, I don't, it just, I,
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. When you're doing your writing, how much of your real life do
Hmm.
you put in your writing or your poetry?
Um, the poetry book was a lot of mostly me. It was like experiences. Like the first poem in is called Mama's Bed because when I was little, and I was the youngest, so my oldest sister is like 16 years older. So they were like the two oldest sisters were gone, and then the other sister was dating, and then so I was there a lot by myself. My father was a fireman, so some days he was gone, and then mom would be out doing something, and I would just feel alone. So I would go climb in her bed and just feel comforted. And so I wrote that poem from that, which is usually the poem or superwoman that most people talk to me about, like they can relate to.
Do you have that poem on hand? Would you be able to read it for us?
It's called Mama's Bed. When I was a little girl and I was sad, I loved to climb into my mama's bed. Even though she wasn't in the room, I felt her presence. I could just lay there, think it all out, and get grounded once again. In mama's bed, all my problems seemed smaller. In mama's bed, my soul was soothed. In mama's bed, there was no concept of time. Pillows smelling slightly of lavender, I would stack them up and pull the covers up high around my neck. I was transported to another place. Calming, comforting, cathartic. If I fell asleep, Mama never woke me up. She always let me sleep. Mama's bed worked its magic during my slumber. Yesterday, I found my young asleep in my bed. I left the room and closed the door.
That was so cute. I'm just like thinking of how much my little one loves sleeping in my bed with me.
See,
So
I'm a boy.
yeah, she loves being in mommy's bed. So yeah, I love that story, and I know that you had to be really brave for your youngest leaving your ex. That took a lot of strength to do what's best for your children. And I was wondering if you had some insight on how writing might have given you that strength or that confidence to keep fighting for your children and make sure you kept custody, because I know that that could be a really difficult battle.
It really was. And so maybe because of always writing and reading, and I really love Eleanor Roosevelt. And I guess during that time, I read a quote, and I'm just paraphrasing, and it said, "A woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong she is until she gets in hot water." And I was like, that's it. So it's like I found strength I didn't know I had. And sometimes, at the end of the day, you're just like exhausted. But like some people like to journal. I think I wrote poems more than like journaling. But it just kind of it grounded me, and it just helped me center myself so I could face another day and raise the boys alone because out of that 27 years, let's see, maybe 3 years he had alternate weekend visits, being really generous. But like I said, he assaulted me and my mama was arrested. My youngest was 5 at the time and called 6 and called 911. So that was all bad. So there was therapy, went through 3 divorce trials. It was constantly in court. So through all that, it was just like my kids were my priority. And then I just kept thinking I couldn't go and get the job I wanted to take care of them. So in my mind, I think I kept thinking, if I keep writing, maybe one day I'll publish. And so I joined, it was called Sacramento Writers Group Club. It was like 10 years ago. And when I was in it, I met this lady named Keo, and she was the same age as my mom. She was 88 at the time, and she was just publishing her first book. And she just inspired me, and she was like, never give up. Look how old I am at doing it. So don't give, just keep working. Never give up, never keep following your dream. So it kind of helped me having this dream to follow, you know. And I met her, I met Frances that writes Wordsworth, and she's doing great. They've made plays from her books and stuff. And she's older also. I'm not a young person myself, but um, it just gave me like the light at the end of the tunnel through all the turmoil and court and everything. It was just something to work towards. Like things are one day going to get better, and you know, keep improving yourself and improving your writing and meeting speakers that talk about writing, and it just all made me made me feel better.
What are some ways that having that community helped you not give up on your writing goals? Because I know, especially when you're older, it's very easy to feel like, oh, my time is past.
I
No more.
met Keo shortly after I joined that. That was the first writers group I joined. And when she said that, and she was like, I'm 88. Oh, I'm the same age as your mom. I'm just now publishing my first book. So, uh, some people, whether they're people think of being famous in different ways. So she's like, some people publish their books like my age, some people do it earlier, some people, but it's an accomplishment at any age when you do that. So you don't have to be 25, you can be 80 like me. And I'm just like, wow, yeah. So it's like each poem I wrote or uh, books that I never published. Um, it still was a sense of accomplishment. It was like you set a goal and you do it. And then sometimes you go back and you look at it, and then over time, you've improved and you change it and it gets better. So it, it kind of taught me, in a sense, not to give up. So I'm not giving up on me by writing. Like it's a goal, it's something that I always wanted to do. And it helped me not give up with all the battles in court, the days that I'm just exhausted, like the Superwoman poem, like, you pick up, get the kids ready, take them to school, go to work, pick them up, come home, cook dinner, bath, all that. And then one of them comes and says, oh, I have a problem tomorrow. And you got to like, is Michael still open? And then you have to go there, help them with their, Sutter's Fort or whatever project it is. And it's just like, and then you fall asleep with all your clothes on. You wake up and you're still dressed like from yesterday because you're exhausted. But it just kind of helped you. It helped me have something to look forward to, and felt like I was maybe getting closer to that goal, just incrementally, to finally be a published author. So it just helped me in that way.
Yeah, and you were saying earlier that some of your writings you never ended up publishing.
No.
How important is it to really enjoy just the journey, even if it's not for someone else, even if you're just writing and creating something for yourself? And
Hmm.
like, how are you able to grow from specifically the journey?
Well, so most of the things I was able to keep, some of it, and I learned the hard way. You can't just save it on flash drives because they can get corrupted. So
Mhm.
after you write something, you should always email it to yourself if you write a big chunk of something. So that way it's like kind of copyrighted in a sense because you have the date stamp or whatever. But emails don't ever get lost. Like your laptop could crash or whatever. And so I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
Oh, I was asking about things that you learned from the journey of writing. So making sure you have a backup, and that's very true with art too. I do more art than writing, and
Oh,
I cannot tell you, especially with animation, how many times I have to save things like 3 times. So this everything here you're saying completely relates to the art world too. So yeah, and I was just asking any other lessons or anything you've learned from the writing journey, even if you don't end up publishing what you wrote.
yeah, because like some of the stuff that I wrote a long time ago, like maybe 5, 10 years ago, and if I go back and look at it now, I can almost see Jamie back then, and then I can see where I've grown and the difference. And then some a couple of the things I like the book that I'm working on now that's kind of a murder mystery. It it's like I still went back to it, but it's like I've changed it now. It's like it's kind of renewed or something, kind of like me, but it's it's like an ongoing thing, kind of writing for me. It's like back then it gave me an outlet because I was always home with the boys or at their sporting things, but there I didn't really date. I didn't have any personal life. And now that I'm free to do that, um I still like I mean I have that, but I like writing because sometimes it's like the things that you want to do but you can't do, and you live through that. It's like an escape in a way. And so just the journey of writing that, and just like the erotica book Sensuosity, and people were like, those are all your fantasies. I'm like, no, not really. It's just, the pantser thing, like, whoa, what would you do if you did this? And then so it's like basically she's on the beach and she starts reminiscing about a past lover, then she meets a new one, and then one from the past comes, and so all three of them get intertwined. But it's not what I'm living now. So people are like, oh, you have three men? No, not. But it's still like just the journey of writing it was like it was like I lived it kind of, even though it wasn't me. But so that was like a more personal thing. A lot of me is in it, not necessarily the sex parts, but the the people, like the people that I work with are like part of the people that Mia, the protagonist, is with. Except for one person, he really is. Mark is really the person. The little gay office person is really him, and he gave me permission. So I've known him for 20 years, and he just fit in the book.
I know for me, sometimes when I go through something difficult, I will use that experience to portray a specific emotion or something through my art or through my writing. Is that something that you do with your writing?
Yeah, it's like another unfinished book. So my oldest son was Marine, and going through that experience as a mother of Marine, um, I wish that someone could have told me what to expect. Like when he told me he was going to the Marines, I had such a hard time. I couldn't even talk to him for like a week. I'm like, my nephew was in the Air Force, and I was just like, oh, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you. And he was like, Mom, you always told me to shoot for the best. The Marines are the best. And I'm like, Jeremy, your room looks like Oscar Madison. How the hell can you be a Marine? So then he was like, after a couple of days, he's like, Mom, will you go see Staff Sergeant, please? So I went and we had a discussion, and I said, I don't understand why, blah, blah, blah. And then he explained how they kind of break them down and make them stronger. And Jeremy's like, Mom, I know I could die, but if that's how God takes me, maybe I help somebody. How can you argue with that? So I got behind them, I got in the Facebook group, got through the boot camp and stuff. And so when they're in boot camp, you're like, oh, they made it through grass week. They made it through swim week. They made it through this. He didn't go to medical. He's going to the, you know, he's going to finish. Or, but then after they get trained, you realize, and he was a combat engineer who set the charges and stuff, and those are the people that die a lot. But you're like, okay, my son was trained to kill. And now he is a Marine. He could do it at any time. And so then it's like a whole different set of emotions. So I start writing a book about that, right? Just to help guide people for what to expect, because boot camp is one thing, but then once they hit MCT, their next training, and then they go to their school for whatever their specialty is. And then when they hit the fleet, you're just kind of like, so my son went to Okinawa for 2 years. And I was like, I met other moms that were like lost. They didn't understand. And I was, helped them get into groups. And the support is really important. So that's another book I started writing. But by writing it, even though I never published it, I finished it, but I didn't publish it. It helped me through that journey with him, writing it to help someone else, which I still might publish one day, but writing it during while he was going through different things when he went to the Philippines, and he got hurt and different things, and he's all the way across the world, and it's like, your emotions, and it's like trying to help another mom or a father um, deal with it, or what are the resources, because it's hard to reach anybody in the Marines that can help you. You can't talk to their staff sergeant or the command. So most of your support is with other families, and there's certain groups that help you with that. But I didn't know all that. You kind of have to get out through things that happen. So writing it helped me with Jeremy's journey through Marines. So I'm glad he didn't reenlist. But and he told me that, he was like, "Mom, I have bad news. I know you got all your mom gear and you wear your red on Fridays, but I'm not going to reenlist. Are you okay with that?" And I'm like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, I was like, "Yes." Although he came back here for a while, but he's in Virginia now. But it's okay. At least he's here and he's safe. So
Yeah, and I love how you were kind of talking about how you were able to use writing to express things that maybe nobody, because when we try to explain something to someone, um, like there aren't really words to describe it just with talking, and sometimes we have to use an artistic way of writing, like poetry
yeah, I,
or art or music, to really get that message across in a way that people can emotionally connect to. So it sounds like that's kind of what you did. And I really hope that you do end up publishing it, because I can tell you that, there are people who could really use that.
yeah, because there was a time I could really use it, and I was just like, oh, and luckily a couple of the administrators in one of those Facebook boot camp things kind of directed me in a different direction, and their son was also in the Marines, and so I learned stuff from them. But it was like I really put myself out. But if there was like some kind of guide to just help those people, it would be really good. But still, me learning it and writing it while I was going through it kind of still helped me get
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, even if you don't publish it, it was still like it helped you. So that's awesome. And then my last question before we end, I would love for you to just, if there were someone who is wanting to be a painter or a writer or a musician or anything, and maybe they are over 50 and feel like it's too late, what one piece of advice would you want to really want them to understand so they don't feel discouraged?
You need to follow your soul. And if your soul tells you to write, to paint, to play music, to do it, do it. It's never too late. I mean, what if you live to 100 and you did it at 55? What if you only lived to 60 but you still made a difference? Like it's I thought it was too late, but it's not. You need to follow your soul and listen to your soul. If your soul tells you to write it and it makes you feel better, possibly it's going to enlighten someone or make them feel better when they read it or hear it or
Like that 88-year-old, and
yes.
she inspired you, and you're inspiring other people. It's like a whole chain of inspiration, right?
Yeah, she just had her 100th birthday. She's kicking it. Yes.
So awesome.
It is. It is.
Well, I love that message, and yes,
People that helped me because I felt really old. Like now I feel really old because of this. But, what are you gonna do? Got
um,
living. Keep living. Keep writing, keep singing, painting, whatever brings you joy because that's what counts.
yeah,
Finding
I 100% agree. I love that. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom and your message. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I'm excited to hear whether you end up publishing that other book or not.
okay, I'll let you know.